exclusive episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in true crime. And today, Great Scott, it's your True Crime Phil, a show so good it happens every Friday, and this is Friday, thank God. And I'm in a weird mood, and the COE was all concerned because she couldn't get the names on the screen, and suddenly, as you can see with your very own eyes, there are names on the screen. Scott Duffy, FBI retired, Wilmington University Criminal Justice Institute. Fil Waters, Houston PD, homicide detective, 23 years in homicide, 197 in total. And the guy is a world expert at obtaining criminal confessions. If I look and sound tired, it's because I am. Hate to talk about myself, but I will for just a moment. I just got done doing podcast with Josh Ritter for True Crime Daily, and that will be out next week. But more importantly, Carm and I have been hard at work. I'm going to put some pictures on Instagram. It won't do any justice till I have the COE is going to stop by. But we are recording the audiobook, and this is not just any recording studio, Fil and Scott. This is a place that is next to about 10 gentlemen's clubs in the middle of a warehouse district, in the middle of this kind of a off the beaten path in Miami. And you pull into, oh, really? You saw pictures on Patreon of the recording? Maybe I sent some to the COE. Maybe she put those up already, but those don't do it any justice. So long story short, this place is wild. I mean, that's the only thing I can tell you. And I will put photos up. Kanye West recorded his last album there, and all these giant Latin musicians, Latinos, Hispanics, not sure the correct terminology, the Latin American artists all record there. And it is an interesting place. And the smell of marijuana in there is probably affecting my mother's ability to read in a good way. Phil does not like to hear that. He's shaking his head. He is rolling his eyes. Let's avoid that altogether. I am hearing, by the way, that today is Dan Markel's father's birthday. Phil Markel, who is a great guy, tried to confirm this, but Phil, whether or not it is your birthday, and I think it is, happy birthday to you. Hope you are having a wonderful time, and kudos to Carm. She's doing an amazing job. I was just telling Scott Duffy, this could either be one of the most amazing things to have my beloved 85 almost year old mother reading this, or it could be the biggest unmitigated disaster of all time. I have no way of really telling until the editing part of the audio is done. Scott Duffy, let me start with you so I don't immediately get behind in the voting. How was your week, Scott?
It was good. I think if you start with me in the beginning and finish with me in the end, I think everybody will be happy.
I noticed there's no hat today.
No
hat. Phil,
can I start with a correction?
Yes, please do.
And an interruption. Go ahead.
Yes.
So last week, you asked what we were doing over the weekend, and I said we were having our twins, our grandchildren, over. And unfortunately, my lovely bride was down with the crud, so it didn't happen. But I mentioned, you asked me how old they were, and I said 9.
Ooh.
Well, my wife, after watching the replay, quickly corrected me that they are 10 years old at the time that you asked that question, and they turned 11 last Tuesday. So somewhere I lost 2 years.
2 years.
I think that's my mad cow that was affecting my thinking. So it's hard for me to believe that my son is 38 years old. I keep seeing him as, in his late teens and early 20s. But be that as it may. So in lieu of last week not being able to get with the twins, tomorrow and Sunday tomorrow we will be celebrating Mateo's 11th birthday. We're going to a paintball range.
You should be good at that, Phil. That's your world.
Well, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then Sunday we are celebrating Sophia's 11th birthday. And I think we're going to some extreme putt-putt golf course or something, but I'm not sure. I just know I'm going to show up and celebrate their birthdays. So wanted to make that correction, and duly noted.
Phil, the only thing I thought would be different was that you were going to tell me that you said that they were 9, but they're actually 17. But the fact that they're 10, it's not bad.
Excuse me for just 1 second.
Oh boy, another Ferrari dealer is in the house.
So
Scott, do you think that he was going to say that they were 9, but his wife corrected him and told him that they were actually 17 years old? I thought that's where he was going.
You know that they're driving.
Yeah,
he went from kindergarten to being licensed drivers. Wow, so they gained 2 years in a week.
Yeah, I don't want to publicly embarrass my middle daughter, but we're walking to school today, Scott, and I promise we'll get to true crime in a minute. For those of you who are new, this is Friday here. I'm always amazed that more than one person is watching. At what age?
Right. Sorry about that. It's funny that you mentioned Ferrari because it is my latest issue of Prancing Horse from Ferrari.
There. Bill gets his old school magazines. I love it. Scott Duffy, how old were your children when they learned to tie their shoes?
Oh, God.
Do you remember?
I'm trying to think. I'm sure everyone was a little bit different. You know, it's not one of those things that's registering in my head as like, wow, that was a big deal. I will say this, I cheated. So I did a lot of the Velcro straps just to skip all that stuff.
Yeah, that's smart. Phil, your 38-year-old son, does he know how to tie his shoes?
Does he know how to tie his shoes?
Yes.
At this point, yes.
Yes,
knows how to lace up boots and all that good stuff.
That's good. So my 8-year-old and I are walking into school, and I have to say she's a very bright child. She seems to be getting over 100 because she gets extra credit. She likes to rub it into the other sibling's face. But she tells me, and I don't know if she's telling me the truth, that she does not know how to tie her shoes, and she's 8. And I told her the following. I said, Z-Bugs, I'm not tying your shoes for you. You better get a friend at school to teach you. You should know how to tie your shoes. You should know how to do this at 8. And she just continued to walk with untied shoes. And I'm wondering if she ever tied her shoes. COE, if you could let me know that. I'd appreciate that. By the way, Tam Gold here. I don't know how closely either of you follow this, but Michelle Troconis, this woman who was on trial for conspiracy to commit murder in this very high-profile case involving Jennifer Farber Doulos and Fotis Doulos, who unalived himself. Almost across the board, every expert I talked to said that she would never get convicted on the most serious charge, which is conspiracy to commit murder. And today she was convicted on the most serious charge. Fil Waters,
on all counts.
Yeah, what do you think of that, Fil Waters? All the experts said no way, and the jury said yes way.
All the experts, or who are the experts you're talking to? That's the first question I would have. And second, we're not sitting in the jury in the trial. We're not part of that jury. They are hearing all of the facts. The prosecution is presenting the case that they hope comes to a successful conclusion, which is a guilty verdict, which is what they got, which says that they presented the evidence that allowed the jury to convict her beyond a reasonable doubt. So I never try to predict what's going to happen in a jury trial, because you just never know what a jury is going to do. However, in this particular case, I've seen some of the interviews. And I realize we just saw clips, but the other evidence that they had was, I think, insurmountable, and thus we have a conviction on all counts. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at the verdict.
And by the way, I'm not surprised because the COE took it under her wing to start this new channel. She covered this trial gavel to gavel. She did it impeccably well. And today, this morning, I was supposed to do this other podcast. So I was in the studio. The verdict comes back, and lo and behold, as everything in our life goes, it was not planned at all. But the COE, I was in global headquarters in an undisclosed bunker in Miami, and she was at Studio 1K, named after Carm, back at the ranch. And so we were on together covering for the first time ever, even in news. I don't think we were ever on together. And kudos to the COE. She did an amazing job, and she handled it like the pro that she is. So she was doing all the breaking news around the case, including the post conviction press conferences with the defense attorney and the state. Scott Duffy, do you have any words of wisdom on a jury? Once again, experts, not you, because you guys are always right, but attorneys that I had on said they would never get this conspiracy to commit murder. It was too big a bite of the apple that they couldn't take that bite out of it. The state could not. Lo and behold, verdict comes back, guilty on all counts. What does that say about judging a jury and experts judging a jury?
Yeah, I think no matter what experts you have at your table on both sides trying to figure out the jury, I've sat in quite a few jury selections, and you try to figure out who's what, whatever, and it's it to me, and it comes down to how the prosecution presents its evidence, and how the defense tries to mar everything that the jury just heard, and let the let the chips fall where they may. So from what I've gathered, I would probably have been doubtful as well from what I've heard. But as Phil said, what's said in that courtroom that goes well beyond what's been out in the media spectacle says it all. And so they must have had a great case.
Phil, let me depress everyone. It is Friday, and it's time to get down and depressed. The saddest thing about this case, outside of the fact that Jennifer Farber is no longer with us, and aside from the fact that her 5 children are now living with grandma, is that the body was never found. In your experience as a homicide detective, she was declared dead by a judge, but the fact that there is no body, that there's nowhere to go to visit her, what kind of impact does that have in your experience as a homicide detective for the family here, that they have no one to visit, nowhere to go?
Well, not only do you have just the loss of a loved one from an emotional standpoint, but you have no ability to, at least in a proper way, bury this loved one and inter them. And so when you don't have that body, that's the piece of the puzzle that's always missing until such time as perhaps the body's recovered, and then they can honor that person in a physical way by a proper burial and recognition of that person. So it is tough. I know that when I've had a couple of no body cases and have met with the families, and the one I've talked about here a lot is the case of a young Honduran woman that was murdered by her boyfriend. And to this day, we don't know where her body is. And he is now back in the country. He's been apprehended. He was the barber that got apprehended in Guatemala. And before all of that happened, still on the job, I met with that family. They flew in from Honduras, her mother, her father, a couple of siblings. And so we had the family there. And we had the language barrier. They spoke Spanish. I don't speaky. So we had that barrier. However, because of my involvement in that investigation and having daughters and granddaughters and understanding and empathizing with their loss and knowing what I've seen before and how I would feel if we had not recovered the body, it's of great impact. It was to me because sharing with them and trying to encourage them that I was going to do everything I could do to hopefully recover the body, and they could bring her back to Honduras and give her a proper burial. So it's a very emotional moment, and it's just it's, I don't know what the word is. It's sad to look into the eyes of these parents and not be able to give them that final answer. And it's the loss of the daughter is bad enough, but there's this one part that it's just kind of hollowed out, and the only thing that's going to fill that particular part is going to be recovering the body. So it's tough. It's tough.
And I think it's something we don't all think about. Now I'm going to get really depressing, and then I promise I will get uplifting and we'll have fun the rest of Friday. But, I never thought about this. And this summer when I was writing the book, I went to Europe to see my mother's hometown, and we went to visit her father's grave. But it occurred to me, he has no grave because he was gassed in Auschwitz. And once they were gassed, they were cremated and tossed away, the ashes. So he has no final resting place. So what they did was write his name on my great-grandfather's tombstone. And I had this moment where I was watching my mother looking at his name on this tombstone, thinking how crazy it must be to not have that person anywhere, that they're just gone, literally gone in the wind. So it kind of came full circle. Heavy stuff, crazy stuff. I'm hoping that Michelle Troconis, now that she's convicted and if she knows where the body is, will come clean. That's the least that she can do. All right. Obviously, we're going to be talking about a story that's not too pleasant, but promise not to require everyone to reach for a bottle of wine just in order to survive this whole ordeal today. I never knew that, Scott Duffy. I'm going to look at this comment. I never knew that right-handed people could not teach left-handed people how to tie shoes and vice versa. Maybe that's why my middle child, Z-Bugs, has no idea how to tie shoes. It also could be that I've just never offered to show her how to tie her shoes. I'm going to get hate mail that I'm a horrible dad. Got to learn on your own in this world. You got to teach yourself. That's what I say.
Well, I'm not sure that's correct. My son's left-handed, and we were able to teach him how to tie his shoes. So maybe that was an anomaly. I don't know.
Fil Waters, when you taught your son how to drive, this is something my dad did. He would never let me step on the brake. He never wanted to wear out the brake pad. He used to go to Schwarzenegger. That was the name of the auto place in our town. Everyone at Schwarzenegger knew my dad. But did you let your kids, and Scott, you're going through driving lessons now, but Fil Waters, were you one of those guys that said, let off the brake there, son?
I don't remember that specifically. Of course, I drive like a cop, so I use the brakes, with great ferocity. But no, I actually took my son through the driver's ed program. The girls went through, school stuff, but no, I actually put him through the program. So it was, he was taught how to drive properly, taught how to drive a manual, and which I think is a dying art, right? Not too many people know how to do that anymore.
No. I am mystified. I look at the numbers and they're climbing instead of declining in rapid fashion. Scott Duffy, just one more question on the driving, and then we'll get to true crime. Super Planner Girl just gifted a membership. Thank you. I've never seen your name, Super Planner Girl, so hello. You're teaching your child how to drive now. Do you scream to get off the brake because you don't want to wear out the brake pad?
No, he's pretty good, and he successfully got his license. So we are We are good there.
Oh,
Um,
how,
yeah,
how
just
early?
just this week, or this past week. So we're it was both a combination of myself, my wife, and then of course a bit of professional help just to help in a couple of areas. I think Phil would agree. In law enforcement, you do have a tendency to take the car to the max, which is very good in many regards. Probably not for a young driver who needs to obey every speed law and not drive up on sidewalks and things like that. So
Scott Duffy, take us behind the scenes of the Duffy residence inside maybe your child's bedroom. What do you say to him when it comes to drinking and driving, and as you just said, obeying the laws? Do you close the door and say, son, if I ever catch you drinking and driving, if I ever catch you drinking and driving, you'll be staring down the barrel of my fist? What do you say to him? Because I need lessons. I need to know what to say.
yeah, the drinking driving aspect is a tough thing. It comes down to um the tough thing about being in law enforcement is you go into so many different households and different crimes and so forth, but especially having been in
Sorry,
patrol
super
for
planner.
DUIs.
Go ahead.
So you see a lot of what works and what doesn't work. I think for me, knowing my high school, good program they put in, the school that we're in, having all the cars out throughout prom season and whatnot that have been destroyed through accidents. The I try to let them know, um, you have to call me. You have to, day or night, time, whatever it is. If you find yourself in a situation, regardless of what it is, that you cannot drive, you have to call. I'll be upset,
Mm,
but I'll come get you.
there you go. There you go. I think I've told the famous Volvo story. It's too long. I'll save it for maybe later in the show, but that's another story about coming to get a child when I was in high school. The COE put this up. Let's take a quick look at this. This is the statement from the Farber family today. Gloria Farber is the mother. We have lost a mother, daughter, sister, cousin, and cherished friend. Jennifer's loved ones cannot bury her next to her father. It is our hope that the resurgent public interest in this case might spur new viable leads. In the meantime, Jennifer's grace, goodness, and light live on through her children and through the honor of her memory. We ask that you respect Jennifer's memory and the privacy of her family and loved ones at this time. That just gave me goosebumps. Horrific for the family to have to deal with that. I'm sorry, Farber's horrible. Hopefully, someone, Michelle Draconis, gives up where that body is. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot today about Mercedes Vega. And again, someone just mentioned this to me in passing, and I do listen to everyone, and I went and kind of looked at it, and I thought it was interesting for Fil and Scott because it's still unsolved. It was last April, a year ago, that police showed up, Maricopa County Sheriff's deputies showed up at mom Erika Pillsbury's door and told her that their 22-year-old daughter, Mercedes Vega, was dead. The mother's quote says, "I miss her so much. She was so bright. She was such a beautiful, sweet, kind soul. She did not deserve this. She didn't deserve what happened to her. It just doesn't seem real that she's gone. She was mine, and the person that did this had no right to take her away." And like I said, next month will be a year since her murder. Fil Waters, they're frustrated with police. What's it like from your perspective when a case goes on for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, and now next month is going to be a year? You take that personally as a homicide detective? Do you feel the pressure? Do you feel the weight?
Well, I'd say the short answer is yes. I mean, I always, every case I ever had, I always went in it with the attitude that I was going to solve it. And there is that small percentage that I was unable to do that. Some of those I knew who the suspect was. To my opinion, what the evidence led me to believe was that I had the right suspect, that there was nobody else except for this person that could have done this or would have done this. And I just did not have enough evidence to bring forth to the DA's office for a charge. And that is very frustrating. And I used to have, there were a couple of cases I had where the parents would call me every year on the anniversary and ask me, if anything else is going on and so forth and so on. I tried to keep in touch with them throughout, the period of time. And then there just becomes a point where I tell them that if something new happens, I will call you. And unfortunately, there were some of those cases where nothing new ever happened, and you hit the wall on those things. And we used to take those cases, put them up in the cabinet, and say, "We're waiting on a phone call." And sometimes that phone call came, and sometimes it did not. So it's always an unfinished story. And so for me, it did affect me in a lot of different ways, because I simply could not bring about what I had always strived to do for the victims' families and for the victims themselves, was to get the right person who's done the wrong thing, bring about a measure of justice, and bring about a sense of peace for the families and friends. So yeah, it is. It's a very frustrating feeling.
Mark M says Phil drives like Starsky. You said you drive like a cop. Starsky and Hutch. Who was Starsky? Who was the blonde? Who was the brunette guy? Starsky and Hutch. One of them.
Well, Starsky was the curly-haired
guy.
Yeah, and Hutch was the other one. In fact, Hutch just passed away.
Yeah, one of them just died. And what kind? Phil would know this. What kind of car did they drive, Fil Waters?
They drove a Ford Torino that had the super hot little, jacked up in the back with the big tires and mags and all that, and then the neat paint, red with the big white stripe that came to a point at the front end of the thing. It looked like it was going faster than it was. But yeah. And I'm not a Ford guy, but I believe that, it was a Ford Torino, if I'm not mistaken.
Those were the days before good special effects too. I'm old enough to know Starsky and Hutch, but I was a big, were you a big Chips fan, Scott Duffy?
I probably caught most episodes. I did. I enjoyed Chips growing up.
Yeah. And when you saw Ponch, did you say one day I'm going to be like Ponch?
No, not so. I wasn't a motorcycle guy. So the others that always backed them up and came in the police cars were probably.
That was your thing. I thought being a California highway patrolman was like the coolest thing on earth. Scott Duffy, when you've had cases like this Mercedes Vega case where you have not been able to solve it, what does it do to you at your core? I mean, you guys are both type A guys, both ready to throw down on an airplane if someone's misbehaving. I can't imagine that it's not eating away at you a little bit when you can't solve a case.
Yeah, it is. You do take it home to a point. You also have to know how you have to leave it back, but it's always like, I'm 5 years out and there are cases unsolved that I'm always thinking of something that I did or didn't do, and then would be in contact if I could. Hey, go back, to somebody who may have the case now and say, just check to see if this was done or that was. It's the unfortunate thing is, as in professional investigations, you're an investigator and that's your job, and so thereby you want to solve the case. And just as people come to your house or you go, to work on one thing or another, plumbing, electric, and they get the job done and you're happy. And the work is done. In law enforcement, it is often not like that. There's so much you learn with each case going on and getting better and better and sticking to your plan and so forth. But but then it many times comes down to somebody who needs to be that person who's going to talk is not talking, or or something outside of what law enforcement can do. And that's very frustrating, knowing that who is going to provide that piece of information that can then just help the investigator get to the next step. And without that, you're stuck. It's very frustrating.
Look at Blackwood Door. She could be a detective. Scott's glasses are gone.
That's good.
I did not notice. I'm usually very perceptive, but it is a Friday, and I think we're all tired at the end of the week. Scott, you're holding them in your hand. How come?
Just a bit of a change up.
Hmm.
But I can't see anybody, so it's
Oh, that's all right. You're probably better off. Abby, ta ha 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 ha. My heart is racing and I'm out of breath because I just finished making batches of popcorn for our residents at work super fast. What a sweet young woman she is. But I'm home and live with my dad, Joel, Scott, and STS Nation.
Hello, daughter.
Yeah, I think her birthday was it back in November. I can't keep track of time, but it was sometime I think in like November-ish when we had Abby live on here. So back to Mercedes Vega. By the way, this is her, a beautiful young woman. Tragic. I mean, when you look at this, last April, Maricopa County deputies responded, Fil Waters, to reports of a car burning outside. I'm going to mispronounce this. Tonopah or Tonopah. It's a American Indian name, obviously. They found Mercedes Vega's body in the back seat of this car that's burning 60 miles west of her home in Tempe. And police say that she was abducted from her Tempe apartment complex. It is, again, next month, 1 year, no arrests. Fil Waters, I mean, there's so much to cover here, but they find her body in the back of a burned out car. You're the most seasoned investigator that there is. What does that tell you, if anything, right away, or nothing at all?
Well, I would imagine it's going to be, gosh, in a case like this, you start peeling back the onion, and sometimes it really starts to stink and it brings you to tears. But so the curiosity here for me is who would be motivated to do this to this young lady, and the burning up in the vehicle. I have worked cases like that. I've read where the autopsy determined that she died of smoke inhalation, which means that she was alive when they lit the car on fire. A horrible, horrible death. And I have to wonder if it was done. I know part of the reason is to destroy evidence. But I wonder too, if whatever it was, whatever the reason was behind this act of evil, yes, this is another act of evil, that would possibly be by the people who did this, excuse me, were sending some kind of a signal to other people. So I don't know, and there's not been a whole lot divulged by authorities about this case. So, which leads me to believe that there may be some things about this case that even the smallest release of information might compromise the investigation. But I'm just a little surprised that at this point that there's not been something. I'm sure videotape at this apartment complex was checked if it was available, if they had it. You got to go into her background and find out who she associated with, boyfriends or girlfriends for that matter. I mean, who knows? But it's one of those that's got a lot of questions, not a whole lot of answers, at least of what we know, and we know very little. And so and I know this is frustrating for the family. Now, have you read, Joel, where law enforcement has been in touch with the family, or are they just icing on that?
The family has reached out. There's a kind of a grassroots effort out there, to get information. There's social media accounts, Facebook pages, things of that nature. But they're just not giving any information. I mean, Phil, when police like yourselves aren't giving any information, is it tactical? Is it for a reason? Does it mean that you may have a lead on something, and you're just keeping it very close to the vest, or does it just mean they have no idea what's going on? And if that's the case, why aren't they asking for the media's help more?
Well, that's what we don't know, right? So that kind of echoes what I just said, is that, gosh, there may be some details about this thing that the detectives involved just don't want to release because they're afraid it's going to compromise the investigation in some way. And to the extent that I've got to believe they're talking with the family and explaining to the family that we're still actively investigating this thing, and there are just some things we divulge at this time. And as bad as that sounds, I mean, I would say I've had those conversations, and it's a tough conversation to have, but my hope is that they're moving along in a very methodic way, and they just don't want to bring anything to the public that will compromise their overall investigation. So it's just it's horrible. I mean, there's nothing good about anything about this particular scenario, and I'm just, again, hoping and praying for those detectives that if they'll be able to follow up on some leads, it's going to give them some answers.
Look at this comment. Eloquent Pirate. My child was burned alive. She was degloved because of the lighter fluid and had bleach in her throat. This is my baby girl. I'm confused, and I apologize because I don't know. Erika Pillsbury is the mother, and I don't know what she looks like. So Eloquent, I don't know if you're speaking about Mercedes herself. Let us know in the chat. And either way, reach out to us, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. But no matter what the circumstance is related to that, this is horrific. And SCS Nation is one of the most empathetic, compassionate communities. So our hearts go out to you. Oh, wow. I am Mercedes'
There
mom.
you go. So let's, I'm glad she's on here. So I'm hoping and praying, that SDS Nation is lifting Mercedes' mom up, and this is tough. This is very tough.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say. There's nothing to say other than our hearts are broken for you, and we are here. This is why I'm a journalist, and this is why I got out of traditional media, so I can kind of do my own thing. So, Erika, if you or Tom, the dad, need us to do a show, or need us to get information out, or you need to talk to Phil, or you need to talk to Scott, doors open.
Yeah.
Surviving the Survivor.
Let me ask her a quick question.
Yeah.
So if this isn't, in fact, Mercedes' mom, what has been the discussion between you and law enforcement? If you kind of share that with us about what that discussion has been, and to what extent have they been able to give you some information. So hopefully she'll respond to that.
And COE, please track that in the chat. And this is unbelievable that Mercedes' mother, Erika Pillsbury, is here, and she was a beautiful young woman, and I'm sure very smart and capable. I hate when people just say she's beautiful, because I'm sure there are many other aspects, and I always tell my daughters that to just beauty, and it's also what's inside. So, and I mean that sincerely. So, Erika, if you need us, or you need to talk to Phil, I know Phil would talk to you, Scott would talk to you. Survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com, and maybe I'm the one that's probably least able to help, but these two gentlemen, and I know Scott has done this for some other families already. Scott, I was going to ask you before this comment, but I'm going to ask you anyway. There's so many people in here who had no idea about this story. It's kind of a sad comment on our society, and sometimes, I wonder about where we all live, and I mean in this great country, that there are so many violent acts, so many horrific murders that people can't keep up. They don't know. If you're in like the Netherlands and something like this happens, most people are going to know because it doesn't happen there very often. Have we just become just a ridiculously violent society? And is it sad that people don't know about a lot of these stories?
I could answer that in a couple of different ways, and knowing that the mom is on here, I think if I can say a couple of things. First and foremost, we give our opinions and our thoughts and hope that something can move forward, or the audience who may or may not have behind the scene thoughts of what goes on in an investigation, that we can give our ideas and thoughts. One thing that Phil and I are always very aware of, and I think, Joel, your show has always, at least since I've been a part of it, extremely um, empathetic to family members, victims, because there are victims that will go into the chat room of victims of a similar crime, right? And so we are always well aware of that when we provide our thoughts. As I've read, tried to catch up on this, I too was not aware until you sent it out, right? And so then I do my homework as much as I can. So the my as Phil had asked the question, my question would also be, what, if anything, has law enforcement done with regards to family members, with regard in specific to victimology, right? We have our thoughts, and our thoughts are we're not part of the investigation, so we only go with what is out in the media or that's given to us in this forum. And so there are thoughts we have because of past experiences. For example, the bleach in the throat, those horrible, torturous aspects of the crime, and things that haven't been discussed yet, to what this absolute beautiful person had gone through,
Mm.
and then of course who suffers, but the family that
Scott, real
remains.
quick, this is Erika, the mom. Very little in terms of what police are saying.
Okay.
We've been told to keep quiet. We are no longer staying silent. My baby
No,
girl matters. Um,
absolutely.
Eric, if you want to hop in, I'm sure the
Mm.
COE can get you on streamer. I don't know how to do that, but someone was just mentioning that, and I will completely pivot. This is more important. So if you want to come in and you want to talk to Phil and Scott, we've never done that before, but I'm happy to do it for the first time now. So if you want to get on via the link, the COE will do that, and she'll let me know. But until that happens, I'll continue to go on. Sorry to interrupt you, Scott.
No, no, absolutely. This is what we do, and this is exactly, to try to bring an answer, uh, uh, or whatever we can, of some sort of comfort that this continues to get attention and move forward, because the this family needs answers, right? Like so many families. So going back to, I did not know about it, and then of course reading what is out there, whether it's factual or not. They bring up thoughts. Okay, this is the way I would approach it. These are the questions I would have. For example, targeted, not targeted, random. Um, what video is out there that's been captured? The fact that her car was taken and then parked some distance away. Was she abducted going to her car? At her car, was she abducted prior to her getting to her car? But then they knew enough to still take that car, and was something in that car that they needed to make that. Because when a criminal gets involved and commits a crime, they're leaving something of themselves if there's one player, two players, or more. Obviously, two players at least, because you have two different cars. So thereby you naturally have two different drivers. And so the lighting of the car on fire, obviously that's okay. There's evidence in that car, and they want to destroy that evidence. And I have my own thoughts of the bleach in the throat, and then the other, what were they trying to get information? So yes, a victimology would be, and that's where I would hope the mother and family members were interviewed at length by law enforcement to get a full picture as much as they could, the good and the bad, right? Of associates, friends, workers, whatever have you, that could help law enforcement continue on with their investigation. So, yes, that sometimes the breakdown of communication happens between law enforcement and the victims' families. Sometimes it's intentional for reasons known only to law enforcement until the case breaks, and then they can say this is why there was a breakdown in the communication. So it's sad on so many different levels. In this case, from what I've read, seems to have very specific and getting to a point that is law enforcement eyeing somebody, and almost a year seems very long, especially to the family. But where is law enforcement today with regards to what they know or don't know, and what are they able to communicate to the family, at least to give them some sense of, we trust you. You're doing everything imaginable to find my daughter's killers or killer. So that's those would be my initial thoughts of what the communication is between the family and police as to have they done everything imaginable.
Well, it doesn't sound like it. And here's another comment from Mercedes' mother, Phil, to you here. They asked us 3 whole questions about our child. What do you have to say to Erika in response to that?
Well,
If,
I don't know. I wasn't there. My preference would be is to not discuss this on this platform at this point in time.
Mm.
And if she certainly wanted to have a discussion with Scott and I privately, that would give us a lot more flexibility to ask questions and so forth and so on. So I'm not so sure this is the platform to start airing all of this kind of thing about this particular investigation.
Understood, and that's taken with I don't know what it's taken with, but taken seriously by me. So but Erika Pillsbury, this is Erika L, different person, but Mercedes' mom, please stick around and join in the chat, and you can help us fill in some of the blanks here. And here's a question: what is the method of the crime? More of a female offender? It doesn't sound like it. One interesting point. Oh, she did reach out, Phil. She would like to maybe join. Are you against that, Fil Waters?
I
I'm
just see something.
I'm asking Uncle Phil. I think she wants to. I think Mercedes' mother would like to come. I think we should invite her in, and we don't have to discuss all the details, but maybe give her a little peace of mind. What do you think, Phil?
Well, certainly. I mean, whatever you want to do. I'm just saying regarding the investigation, I don't feel comfortable
Okay, so we'll hold off on
sharing that
investigative
here
questions. But
in the public arena when I don't know enough about it
got it.
to do that. So,
But maybe Erika can offer us some information. If anything, maybe we can provide some comfort. So COE, you let me know. We can bring her in, and I just want to.
well, I'm just saying. I would prefer to speak with her one-on-one.
Okay.
Before we start airing stuff here. I mean, that's just my preference. This is just the old homicide cop in me. I'm just not.
Yeah.
I mean, And look, I mean, and I'm not doubting that if she says who she says she is, but we do need to verify that.
You know what? I would like to hear about Mercedes. Maybe we can bring her in to tell us about Mercedes, kind of person Mercedes is, and what we can do to help in terms of you know, if there's GoFundMe's, things of that nature. COE. We won't talk about the investigation. Phil's shaking his head at me. We won't talk about specifics of the investigation, but I do want to tell the audience what happened. On the night of April 16th, around, and this is a year ago, around 9:15 p.m., Scott Duffy surveillance footage shows Mercedes Vega walking to her car at her Tempe apartment complex. She was heading out that day to meet friends, and it is the last look at her before she was taken. She was abducted, and Tom Pillsbury, the father, this is a direct quote, "These people actually tortured my daughter," and that's what Erika just said. About the video where you see her being taken, this is so hard for us to grasp because, as you saw in the video, she did not think anything was going on, because if she did, she wouldn't be looking down. She was looking down, not like, situationally aware. She would have been paying attention to her surroundings if she thought there was a threat. Scott Duffy, again, I know you guys haven't done the proper investigation, but we do what we do usually, which is learn about these cases. But this notion that she was abducted out of her apartment complex at 9:15 at night and seemed to have no idea that anything was coming, is this a random act of violence? If you had it, where's your gut take you?
Yeah, it all depends on the location. Is this an underground parking garage of her apartment complex? Is it outside?
My guess is everything in Arizona, because of the dry heat, is outside. I'd be shocked if it was usually it's outside with a
Sure,
like a carport type situation. That's my guess.
Okay. Yeah, it can go either way, random or targeted. It would just be something that I would like to know a little bit more, like what that video shows. Is she at her car, in her car, then abducted, or abducted prior to her getting to her car, and then why take this car? That if so those things are factors that would factor into me leaning one way or the other. Um, I would then say, from what I have read and what you have just read, my thought would be going towards a targeted abduction, and then work away from that if the evidence didn't take me there. But those would be my initial thoughts.
Hmm. One of the questions that came up, Phil, which I'm curious to get your take, is about the burning of the car. Someone said, doesn't that raise more doesn't that create more attention to the crime than just leaving the car there? Obviously, there were, from my understanding of what you were saying, they're trying to get rid of evidence, but it ain't that easy to do, right, Phil?
Well, I can reiterate what I just said, that the number one, you put her in her car. If it's her car, then that minimizes any suspect's attachment to another vehicle. And again, we don't know the background here, so perhaps this was sending some kind of a signal to somebody else. So we just don't know. And again, not knowing what the detectives know and so forth and so on, I'm just a little reticent to get off into offering a lot of perspectives about this, because we're dealing with just such a limited number of facts. So I can just say in a general sense that putting her in her car, I think that the fact that she's taken from her apartment complex, that she had some relationship with these people, that doesn't appear to be to me random. And so whoever got her for a purpose. And then what they did to her served another purpose. And then what they ultimately ended up leaving her in that particular state, in that scene of the burning car, to me, that served another purpose. But again, I don't know enough about, her history. I don't know enough about this investigation. And so I'm only going to comment on what we know and try to give a perspective about what we know.
Michaela Valentine pointing out our apartment complex was also gated and needed a key fob to go inside and out. So the parents, this is coming from the parents, not the police, Scott, say that she was attacked. And this is from the mother who's in the chat. This is a direct quote from Erika Pillsbury. She was hit over the head and there was tissue and blood in the parking garage. We don't know if she was put in her own vehicle or a different vehicle. What happened next is still unknown. I'm confused here because wouldn't we know the vehicle because it was burned? Wouldn't we know which vehicle it was from that standpoint? But she's talking about when Mercedes was actually abducted. But what
Well,
about?
I don't mean to interrupt you here, Joel, but I've got to believe if it's in a gated apartment, which look, those are limited access gates. I know people refer to them as security gates. I work these kind of premise liability cases all the time. And those are limited access gates and they can be defeated very easily. All you got to do is follow somebody in. So, the fact that it's, you got to have a key fob, that's not necessarily true. So but I am struck by the fact that I would think if it's got a parking garage at this apartment complex, that they've got some sort of video. They've got some sort of CCTV capabilities in the parking garage and throughout the complex. So, I don't know.
Phil,
I'm kind of asking a question here, but I'm surprised that if they don't, I would be very surprised.
I'm going to make an executive decision. COE, I'm making an executive decision now, not just any decision. Please obviously pass along our condolences, and please tell them there's nothing we can say because that's the truth other than our heart goes out to them. But I would like to help them. So please get all of their information. I'm going to put them in touch with Fil and Scott this week, and next Friday, we'll have Mercedes Vega's parents on with Fil and Scott, and it will be a very special show. And we will go through the details once Fil and Scott have spoken to them. So, and they can tell us all about Mercedes, how to help the case, and just make sure you get their information, obviously the emails, the phone numbers, and please send them our well wishes. And everyone is asking what Mercedes' favorite color was, so they can put heart emojis in that color and know that STS Nation has their back. But I'm going to go with my superior here, Fil Waters. I trust him implicitly, and his gut instincts are right. And I think that Fil and Scott should have a conversation privately, and then we will do a full show on this next week with Fil and Scott and Mercedes' parents. Fil and Scott, are you down for that? Are you okay to do that, Fil and Scott?
I am, but I would be a little cautious about making that kind of a commitment when we haven't spoken to her yet. So
okay,
I think we need to, get things in an order here. And I don't know, committing to something like that next Friday, having not even spoken, is this is the time for that. But that could be the hopeful outcome.
There you go.
But
I have hope, Phil.
That's if she's willing to speak to us.
Yep, there you go. So that's Fil is the voice of reason. Scott, I know, is always down to help, and Fil is intelligently and wisely and optimistically cautious. But let's plan on doing that. And Erika, I am here for you at any time, and the COE will give you my cell phone, and we'll connect over the weekend, and we will set something up. So there's that. Wildfire is saying that they wanted her found, and that's why they presumably burned the vehicle. Scott Duffy, I was just saying, tissue and blood, according to the mom who's here, was found. The cause, the ME ruled this death a homicide, Scott, but the cause was burns and smoke inhalation. But on top of that, she suffers blunt force trauma and gunshots. I mean, I can't think of a more horrific death. Scott, obviously a veteran investigator. How are you reading this so far? Does this? I think Phil was saying he believes it's a targeted attack for a reason. Do you have any reason to believe otherwise, or do you think it was random?
No, I still lacking some of the thoughts of, or some of the pieces of evidence which may be known, and if Phil and I can engage off air with the parents, just to kind of get a backdrop a little bit more than that's been said. And so I just, but I also want to reiterate the fact that um that she came on this show, and that she is, and it is all coming up on a year, and she is frustrated by a lack of an arrest. And I think it says a lot to how much they want anything. And so, and I reiterate Phil's caution with that. Like, we want to do what we can, and that would be still opinions, not being privy to evidence. And so, um, you know, I would say the exact same thing. I would like to know more with them, and then and the fact that they come on today says a lot. And I would imagine if they are on board and would like to try to get more information, whatever it is, even some, maybe some inside law enforcement minds of how we work, so be it. And it would be in support of the family, the victim, honoring the victim, and by no means uh trashing law enforcement, because that's not what we do on this program. And so it would simply be trying to give them a little bit more, to maybe perhaps insights. And sometimes law enforcement fails in that communication aspect. And I think if Phil and I can off air, and then if all agree on air next week or some point, so be it, to continue to push, not law enforcement, but somebody else who may have information that needs to get to law enforcement. So this way, if the case is stalled for any reason, for lack of a witness, that a witness would come forward. So that would be my thoughts in moving this forward. So
Yeah, and this is where I think media attention becomes really important. Again, Mercedes Vega's mother, Erika Pillsbury, joining us in the chat, letting us know it was not her car; it was someone else's car. Liz Karen, and these are details I'm sure are brutal for Erika to even listen to or relive. But Fil Waters, again, blunt force trauma and gunshots on top of the burning and the smoke inhalation. But then to just, make matters even worse, she's found with bleach in her throat. The bullet wound was in her arm. Liz Karen here says acid in the throat. Someone didn't want her to speak out or didn't like something she said. Now we're getting into kind of the profiling realm. And I know you only follow the evidence, Fil Waters, but if you're investigating this case and you find bleach in the throat, what's that suggesting to you, if anything?
Well, okay, so here we go. So I've read here where it's been said that gasoline was in her throat, bleach was in her throat. Now we're saying acid was in her throat. I'm just saying here, I am not one to go off on rabbit trails. And, so I'm not trying to be,
I know. No,
unfeeling here. And I'm not trying, I'm just telling you that done this job. This is not the platform at this point to start discussing this stuff, because we're getting 3 versions now, and so I'm just saying that, Scott, if you want to comment, go ahead. But I'm going to have to,
I'm gonna pivot off the investigation because of that, and I'm just gonna talk a little bit now about. So the family, as you can tell, is kind of desperate for answers. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is obviously handling the investigation. And they've got something called silent witness, where I guess you can come forward quietly if you do know something. So the important thing here, obviously, is what Scott just said, which is to get law enforcement the answers that they need. Someone always knows something. The father, Tom, says that they were incredibly close, the 3 of them, the mother, the father, and her, and he's certain she would have said something. She has a best friend, or a very close friend, named Mackenzie Lockhart, who there was a gathering not long ago, I think, in front of the sheriff's office. And she read a letter, Scott Duffy, saying to her friend, "God, I miss you. I never ever in my life thought there would be a world that you weren't in. You were robbed of your life and your future. We, your family and friends, were robbed of watching your future. And it can't just be for nothing. I'll be damned if these vile, evil people will get away with what they did to you." So again, honoring and respecting Fil here, getting away from the kind of the details of the investigation. And I do agree with him. This is obviously the reward that's being offered up right now, $2,000. I think the public should be probably chipping in, or whoever, to help the family and get this number up, because money always talks, and maybe we can do something with STS Nation. But Scott Duffy, what about the importance of media in a case like this that is getting maybe some attention locally, but not a ton of attention, and most people here at STS Nation never even heard of? What role does the media have in terms of drumming up, public interest to, like you said, get the answers that are needed, not for the family right now, but for law enforcement?
It's essential as long as it's respectful, right? It is essential to keep this. For example, if a picture shows up, there's a picture of a suspect. If the suspect hasn't been identified and now time has gone by, but there is a sketch or a photo of something, whether it be, for example, a car, as we discussed in last week's show, with the murder in Spain, or the kidnapping, or whatever it is, the unknown in Spain, how video of an approach, another car or something, and so things like that. When law enforcement releases it, if the media is not going to show it, or programs like this, to where there are many other ways to get the word out, then it dies on the vine. And so somebody who may know something says, "Oh my gosh, that's my neighbor or my family member, something." I can now call in and let law enforcement run with it. It may be something, it may be nothing. So I think media is very important in keeping those type of cases that require a witness to, as Fil said at the beginning of the show, law enforcement did everything imaginable and possible. Physical evidence is tested and being tested. But right now, there is no suspect's name in my file on my desk until somebody calls. So and people call simply because they saw something in the media, or their conscience erupts and they're like, I'm not going to hold back and make a phone call. So it's very good, especially, as I will say, the moms coming on here, that it's almost a year. So they're at their wits' end. They are reaching out. They are trying other avenues. And so, and agreeing with Fil, we are being respectful of not wanting to dive into many different pieces of evidence that are just coming out through different reports, but are not, are taking us wild goose chases, as opposed to, I think this might, th- you know, my opinion is law enforcement should look at this, or go in this direction, or look at this possibility. Those, without that, then yeah, it's simply a wild goose chase, and not helping at all to solve this crime.
Um, Phil, I've never seen you get so much love mail. So much love mail. You're gonna enjoy reading the comments later. But this is why we have Fil Waters here. He is like Yoda. Got a lot of experience. He's wise, and he's been doing this for many, many, many years. There is no better detective in all the land. I will fight someone if they say maybe equal, but no one better. Just Phil, and we're going to wrap this part of it up. And man, it's been a heavy Friday. Um, Phil spends half the year in Hawaii. Mercedes Vega, um, there is a GoFundMe, it says. It is, in fact, the family. We are in touch, and we'll do a full story soon to so the family can share their story about Mercedes, and we can help with awareness. There's a COE. Getting the information, and we will bring a show. Eloquent Pirate, we agree, Phil. The attention puts pressure on law enforcement and the perps. I appreciate you being careful to make sure that you have all the facts. So that is the mother. Phil, anything you would like to say before we get there? Let me just tell you this. This is poignant and sad and all these things, but important. Phil spends half the year, as everyone knows, in Hawaii, where he transforms into Magnum PI, grows his hair out, grows his goatee out. Well, a month before this happened, Mercedes Vega was visiting Hawaii. It was her favorite place. It was obviously the last time she would get there. When she came back, Erika says, she said, "Mom, I want my kids to cremate me and spread my ashes in Hawaii because that's where my soul belongs." And her parents obviously are now left with that final wish. Erika was quoted as saying, "It shouldn't be us. It should be her kids spreading her ashes. She wanted to be a mom." It's given me just goosebumps thinking about this. So, Fil Waters, we're going to move on to a different story in a moment, but your final thoughts to to Mercedes' mother Erika and her father Tom.
Well, I've just shared these thoughts with so many families over the years, and of course, it's words are not enough to express to someone who has suffered a loss in this manner. And when I told those families that I'm keeping them in my prayers, I'm saying the same thing to Mercedes' family and her mom, and that'll happen. That will happen. That will happen today. So we at this point, I just lift them up for comfort and for some guidance in this, and a prayer for the detectives that are in this investigation, that they would be able to move forward and get the right person who's done this horrible thing to this family. So you're not alone in this, I guess, is my message to you. You've got a whole STS nation now supporting you, and I'm sure people will support you in all manner of different ways. And so just keep looking up, and let's pray for a conclusion on this quickly.
Well said, Phil. Scott, anything you'd like to say to the parents of Mercedes Vega, and then we'll spin off to a couple of other stories.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Phil said it all. It is an absolute caring community here, and what Phil and I try to do is just give our 2 cents to help whatever for crime, especially difficult investigations, to be solved, right? But this is absolutely where faith is required, both above and in the system, and so thereby thoughts and prayers with and I want to make sure I have their names. It's Erica and Tom, or the
Erica and
parents of
Tom, correct.
Mercedes. Yeah.
Yep.
So God bless them. Terrible agony that they are suffering, and you know, we'll help you get through it. So to a
Yeah.
point to where it you can start to make sense of things.
And I don't know if a lot of people know this, even though I've mentioned it periodically, but Phil and Scott, of their own volition, they're both retired. They take time, they talk to victims' families, and they help them. And they speak to them, and they know the proverbial drill. They know how the system works. They know how law enforcement operates. So these guys do this, and warms my heart to know that they're part of STS. So, well, Heavy Friday, Phil and Scott. Thank you for your beautiful words from Denishka Bridell, and nothing more I can say. And to the Pillsbury mother and father, Eric and Tom, we are thinking of you, praying for you. No one should have taken your beautiful, smart daughter at 22, and we will do on our end whatever we can do to help. Now on to another horrible story, because that's what true crime is. But we will find, I promise you, in this last half hour, we'll find some humor and hopefully lighten the mood a little bit. But this story is pretty brutal too. 7 people, Fil Waters, in Jasper, Alabama, are now arrested. 4 men, 3 women. Mahogany Jackson was found in the middle of the night, 2:19 a.m. on Monday, lying on the side of the road. The 20-year-old is pronounced dead at the scene from an apparent gunshot wound. The chief came out, Fil Waters. I think we're going to hear your evil speech again. The chief came out and said, "The facts of this case are deplorable and sickening," Police Chief Scott Thurman said at a press conference, noting that Mahogany had been sexually assaulted during her kidnapping. And this was done not by 1, not by 2, not by 3, by 7 different people. Is this group think, Phil? I mean, what's going on here that all 7 of these people joined in on this crime, and there wasn't one rational person who said, what we're doing is wrong, let's stop? What is happening here?
I don't know the facts behind it, but when somebody gets involved in something like that, you have I don't know, the groupthink is maybe too tender of a term to use, but this is a group of people that get together for a horrible, salacious purpose. And there is strength and security within a group of people who are committing an act like this. It gives them a degree of anonymity. And it's not just, well, wasn't me. Somebody looked like me. It was these other guys doing this stuff. So I think it removes, for those type of people to take part in something like this, I think that for them, it removes some kind of culpability, that they're kind of on the periphery of this thing. And yeah, they took part in it, a little bit, but they're not the ones that got it started. But when you have a group that gets this thing going, once it gets started, it's impossible to stop. If there had been somebody in that group that said, "Hey, wait a minute," I guarantee you they would have felt the results of trying to stop it, and they may be laying out there themselves. So, this is one of these. This is a group of people. I'm curious as to know. Again, I'm always curious to know what the relationship is. So how does Mahogany know these 7 people? What was happening before this happened?
Yeah.
What was the catalyst that caused this to happen? And then what were the results afterwards with the 7 people? Did they just sit around and yuck it up and, you know, have a good time about what they just done, or did they try to cover it, or did they, you know, I mean, there's a whole lot of things here we don't know. So I like to know all that I can know, but
Yeah, and we'll fill in some of those blanks. I didn't even think about this. I don't think this is the case, but Scott, you worked with gangs, I believe. Liz Karen, maybe you didn't. Jeff Wood, who I have on a lot from the FBI, he was that gangs was his thing. Gang initiation. Sorry, speculating again. To me, it doesn't sound like I'll let Scott weigh in because it's and just to fill in some of Phil's blanks. Again, the chief went on and said it's absolutely disgusting. This is undoubtedly one of the most heinous acts I've seen in my entire career. Although police have not released a motive for the murder, the chief did say that Mahogany knew all 7 suspects. So she knew them. They videotaped part of this, Scott. They videotaped it. And she, Phil was asking what happened before. She sent a text message to her mother, and the text message is chilling. It says, "Send the police apartment 3, held hostage, don't call." This is, I mean, both crazy, insane, and heartbreaking all at once. But what's going on here? I mean, this is not a gang initiation, right? But she's being held hostage. I mean, what 7 people get together to take one 20-year-old woman hostage? It's something that I mean, I haven't heard of a case like this as far as I know.
Ooh, what are you asking? It's
I mean,
it's yeah. You're talking about
what would be the motive, I guess? What do you think the motive behind this is for 7 people to basically murder this one woman? Again, it's 4 women and 3 men, 4 men and 3 women that are arrested. But what would be the motive here? Is it just that they were bored on a Monday night? What's happening?
Yeah, and the fact and so you had said that the victim had said that there is a relationship, that they
Yes,
all
she
knew each
knew
other,
all of
right?
them. She knew
Yeah.
all of them. Yes.
Yeah, I would be equally interested in that, and that's as we talk in so many of these cases, is getting to know the victimology and it's the good and the bad. Who is the victim with, and what's the association, and then ultimately what is the motive? Does somebody start something, and then everybody starts chiming in? Um, these and I'm not talking about a gang, but these gang mentality of a group where you may have
And by the
someone
way,
that
Scott, look at
initiates.
this. La Mesa, I always say best guess, better community, saying that now an 8th suspect has been arrested. As far as I know, there's obituary was asking if they're legal. They're all of adult age, as far as I know. But now it's 8 people, Scott.
Yeah, yeah, something very bad. And what was happening? Just like Phil said, what was leading up to? What did they do? I mean, were they all involved in these? Just wild behavior, and then it gets out of hand here when somebody is no longer a participant, a willing participant. There's so much to peel back from this, and the fact that they have 8 arrests is just it's just staggering, and then of course it's going to come down to she brought me here, had me do this, and so they'll be able to, with some good interviews, be able to figure out what is the chain of command here? Who started this? Was this did everybody go as a group with the intention of doing heinous things that ultimately led to a homicide? Or did it start out as a um, something and that just escalated? What Gosh, it's just, you the mentality to see that now 8 participants and not one person said, "Whoa, this is way too much. What's happening here?" It begs to be asked what was the intention of this group going over to this apartment. and ultimately led to this horrible death. It's just
Someone said this is a heavy Friday. This is like super heavy Friday, not intentional. Super glad that Erika, and grateful that Erika and Tom popped in. And the COE's texting me that she emailed with them, spoke with them, and we are going to get them on the show once they've had a chance to talk with Fil and Scott. Dwayne Harris, by the way, gifting membership after membership, our friend in Detroit. So thank you, Dwayne. Obituary. This is it's time for a Fil speech right now. I think we all need this on a Friday. Obituary says, Fil, society is breaking down. Rome fell in 500 years. You do the math. Fil, I've asked you this before. You are a religious man. Is this the end? Are we at end times here? It often feels that way, but then you go back in time and things were crazy then. I mean, you go back to like the 1970s and you had the Son of Sam and you go to Ted Bundy. I mean, it's always been crazy, but has a switch been flipped, Fil?
No, and I'm, you said I'm a religious man. I'm not a religious man in the sense that it's just some innocuous religion. I have a relationship with a risen Savior. So, and I see people that say, if he starts talking religion again, I never talk about religion, ever. I never talk about religion, talking about relationship. And so, look, the switch got flipped when the fall came in the garden, and that's what caused the separation between the Creator and the created and the creations. And so and it just has proliferated. So whether you believe it or not, there's good and evil in the world, and right now evil rules the world, and it is because of man's sinful nature that this is happening. So to the degree that it is occurring, look, you're one of the people commented about Rome. Go back and look at when Rome fell, when these great societies fall. Go back to Babylonia. To Babylon. Look, evil's been in the world since the fall in the garden, and so, and I've said it before. The devil roams the earth like a roaring lion, seeking to devour souls. And this is what he does. And he prompts people that are so filled with this that they cannot control these urges. We're seeing examples over the history of time that the old saying about if we don't pay attention to history, we're doomed to repeat it. Well, everybody buckle up. We're repeating what's already happened time and time again. Go and look at the book of Genesis about Sodom and Gomorrah and why those cities were destroyed, because they couldn't find 10 righteous men in that city. And so, this happens. This is what happens. There's evil in the world, and there's only one answer to it. And so when I see these things, when I've seen these types of things over the course of my career, look, I've seen things that I would wish no one would ever see, and I'm sure Scott has too. And it's amazing. It always amazed me what man's inhumanity to man, what people can do to one another in such a horrific manner. It's just astounding, and it's like you think you've seen it all, and you've seen the worst of it, and then you see something else that tops that. So I think Scott and I are in agreement on this. There's one answer to this, And that's the belief in a risen Savior in Jesus Christ. And that's it. And so for those that didn't want me to get religious, I'm not. So I'm abiding by their request. I'm talking about a relationship. And I'll stick to that until the day that I'm before the throne. So there you go. And it's available to everyone, by the way.
Yeah.
It's available to everyone, by the way.
Look at Black Widow. She says, Black Widow says, I'm an atheist. Phil, I'll fight for your right to JC, to your Savior.
I appreciate that. But my prayer for that person would be that they would understand that God loves them, and He's not offended by their particular stance, but He does want to embrace it, and He died on that cross for them, just like He did for all of us. So, but I appreciate that. I do appreciate that.
And I'm about to take us further down the depression alley today. Thomas Creech, 73 years old, convicted of 5 murders, 3 in Idaho. They tried to kill him yesterday. The state did, through lethal injection. Phil, well, I'm going to come back to Phil on this. Don't yell at me, because Phil's got strong opinions, and Mr. Duffy. But I'm curious.
I don't know. I think we've been pretty.
Yeah. Bottom line is here, they tried inserting the injection, the needle, like 8 different times. They couldn't do it, and they finally called it off. I think now he is, he's going to be spared the death penalty. People said that he dehydrated himself, so they couldn't find a vein. Phil, do we need a different method here of execution? They do have firing squad that's been approved in the state of Idaho, but it has not been used yet. But this was an absolute debacle. Yes, it was embarrassment, I think, nationwide. That they
this is the guy that's been sitting on death row for like 50 years, right?
50 years since 19.
This guy should have been rehabilitated about 40 years ago.
Yeah, he's been on since 73, I think.
Yeah, and did you read his background? Why he's on death row?
Yeah, he's not a very nice guy. Let's put it that way.
He's an evil dude, and he was convicted, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he kill somebody in prison once he got in prison?
Yes, he did.
Look, this guy is a mad dog. He's not going to be rehabilitated, and keeping him on the government dole for the rest of his freaking life, to me, is an injustice to all those victims and their families. So he needs to be rehabilitated. If he did, in fact, do this thing to prevent them from raising a vein so they could get a needle in there, an IV in there, to let him get juiced, then they have the alternative now. I think it just got signed into law just recently, right? That the firing squad is
about a year ago, maybe less. Yes.
Yeah.
Firing squad.
So,
do you think they need to turn to that? Do they need
what I say is, put them up on the wall, tie them to the post, line up the 6 guys, load the frickin' weapons, and let's be done with this thing. So they did. Where was it? Was it in Alabama?
Idaho.
They used the nitrogen.
I think that was Alabama. Yeah,
because they could not get the vein on that guy.
Yes, that was Alabama.
Let's send some freaking nitrogen tanks to Idaho and get this thing done. That would be my, if they're worried about him being cruel and unusual punishment, then get him the nitrogen tanks, and then let's get this thing over with.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to the show today, but I'm definitely going to need a drink, either that or I'm just going to go.
And I know, Scott, we're going to have that discussion about the death penalty, because Scott has ventured off the reservation.
But if I can say just one thing, it's obviously not his time. Look at what they did in order to do everything imaginable to bring forth the sentence, and it didn't work. So that
Well,
goes to show
he doesn't get a pass. He doesn't get
it's
a
not
pass.
his. It wasn't his time yet.
Well, he had 50 years to figure out how to dehydrate himself, so they couldn't get the vein. But all right, moving on here. Another horrific story. God, maybe we need to switch to covering Ferraris. Scott Duffy, this is your lane. I don't know why, but it's your turn. An Oregon mother was just sentenced to 3 months in jail and supervised probation. Her daughter had liver cancer, and she kept her daughter from having surgery. Instead, she tried to treat it with CBD oil and vitamins. Eventually, I think Child Protective Services stepped in. This young girl, 13, eventually got the chemo that she needed and all that. And now is older. She's now 17, and she's supportive of her mother. But Phil, where do we draw the line here? You've got a parent. We don't know her motivation. Perhaps it's religious. Some religions don't condone the use of chemotherapy, I think. And maybe she just didn't want, she wanted a natural healing process. But the daughter has liver cancer, and she gives her CBD oil and vitamins. Do we as a society need to step in, which is, I think, what happened here?
Well,
that was a Scott question, Phil.
I mean, well, were you asking Scott, or did you say?
I was asking Scott. I was asking Scott.
He did say
okay,
Phil.
Well, ask, I thought I heard you say Phil, so I'm sorry.
He did. That's good.
No.
He did say Phil, didn't he?
He absolutely said
okay.
it.
All right.
Oh,
well,
I'm sorry. I meant Scott. I meant Scott. Scott, go ahead.
You take it away. My answer is probably going to get people going. So I've already gotten them going. So already. But go ahead.
A parent.
Go ahead, Scott. Yeah. I will release the floor to Scott.
All you, Scott. So what are we asking here? Is she wrong? Are you asking, is the mother wrong for choosing?
The mother served time for this.
The mother's a nut. That's the professional term that we would use in the homicide division. She's a nut. But go ahead, Scott. I digress.
Yeah. I don't know the choose your own question and answer it, Scott. How's that sound? Look at Sherry Douglas here. Man, I don't know what's happening today. I had ovarian cancer. Sherry Douglas says, I don't know that chemo is always the best route or route. I would have to think about it. Phil, do you say route or route, Phil?
Well, when I was on the radio, and when I was when I was a harness bull, I would say I'm en route.
You're en route. And Scott Duffy, what do you say?
I'm the same, route.
Jersey.
But I will say this. So originally from Connecticut, I've changed. I used to have a paper route, but now
that's right. It depends on the inference, right? On how you, because it's Route 66. It's not Route 66.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think en route is actually an adjective, right? It's a verb. If you're en route, you're actually taking and you're committing an act. Yeah, but if you're talking about a noun, which is Route 66, right? So it's a different.
Yeah. That's a good point. Actually, that's probably the best description I've ever heard of that. Makes sense. Abby,
anyway, Scott, go ahead and answer that question now that we've clarified.
I don't even know what the question is anymore. Screw it. Abby says we can end on a good note. My actual son, the brick eater, would like to say hello to his grandpa. So her son is saying hello.
Well, hello, grandson. How are you doing?
Now you have a grandson, Phil. All right, forget that story. This is an interesting story. Back to Scott Duffy on this. This is becoming a much more common problem. We'll only talk to Scott the rest of the way. A New York City professor, she was just awarded $30 million in damages against an ex-boyfriend. She says she thinks her jaw is still on the floor. She's now 42. I'll tell you what's going on in a second. She's an associate professor in public health at the City University of New York. She says that her nightmare began shortly after she broke up with her boyfriend, a guy named Ryan Bromes. He started sending her intimate Snapchat videos and texts, Scott Duffy. She blocked him on Snapchat. And he basically said, if you don't accept me, I'm going to post photos and video of you that they had created when they were dating. And sure enough, he uploads all this revenge porn, and all her friends and the world sees it. Now, this is a modern day problem, Scott Duffy. What, if any, solution is there to this?
Solution. Well, I'm glad she got. She probably won't see a dime of that 30 million, but at least she got the
She said that,
judgment,
actually. She said she will
right?
never see a dime.
Yeah, sure. I probably didn't even have a dime, but
Mm.
yeah, this is the it will be in a forever dilemma on how to control digital media. And so it's absolutely used. It's just amazing as I started to get into child porn cases and to see to me it was just flip the switch, stop it. How is it possible that this can even be allowed? And then just to see how rampant it is, and then of course the dark web and legitimate. So here's somebody who there should be more than a judgment. I wonder if there's a criminal case to go with that as well. Um, to use personal whatever it is that they
Um,
enjoy.
there was a criminal case. He pled out and had to go to some sort of counseling. So
Yeah,
there was a criminal case
yeah,
associated.
and it's forever out there. And what she can do in order to really scrub those videos and photos, but the damage is done. It's out there, and I feel really bad when somebody violates a trust and then uses technology in order to advance that beyond, the old fashioned mail out a few things to neighbors and friends and embarrass the hell out of somebody. And now in digital media, just hit a button, and it's so hard to pull that back. But I it's a dilemma. It's between what do the creators, the powers that be, in order to be able to pull that back, and and then of course the um the end user. So early, if you remember, Phil, early in my career, when Google and everything started to really come on the horizon, law enforcement was allowed to be exempted to have their personal information. And so all you had to do was put a letter out on your law enforcement letterhead and say, "Hey, I'm a police officer. To have my address and personal information could potentially harm me or my family." And it was automatic that it would be scrubbed. And then of course that didn't last long, to where now everything and anything about anybody's personal information is out there. So I know it was possible because I saw it, I witnessed it. And then all of a sudden, whether it be the law, legal, or the lawyers getting involved, that's there is an answer, but I don't think government is doing enough to get that answer to really protect vulnerable victims, first and foremost. But it's it
Scott
is a
Duffy, here's a
huge.
question for you. So I'm not favoring you over Phil, from Courtney. What should we tell our teens about these types of photos and videos? How can kids protect themselves?
Oh, well, what so then of course with with AI, how things are just even made up and are out there. So what exactly is that question with regards to, the porn, the fact that porn
Yeah,
exists
like
on.
revenge porn. Yes,
Yeah.
I believe so.
um yeah, how do kids protect themselves? It's, you have to start early. Say, hey, your relationship and whatever you do behind closed doors with someone who you think you love and respect, it's when it goes south, what are they going to do with that, those prized personal photos? And so it really is a tough discussion to have, but to realize, do you really know this other person? Especially early in life, do you really know this other person? And what you do, is it a consensual bringing both to the table, meet halfway, or is somebody driving that train? And especially young love, you fall for whatever, and then that relationship breaks up, but those photos exist on somebody's phone, somebody's computer, thumb drive, whatever. And then they have a criminal intent to bring harm. So it's unfortunate, but we live in a digital world, and that you just have to really think about what you're doing, and then to know, will your life, your reputation, your career, your future family that you settle down with, to know that stuff will be out there. Unlike, let's just say, a celebrity that puts stuff out there and may regret later, but they put it out there. But in regards to somebody who gives themselves over to somebody who they believe loved and respected, and create whatever, this porn that's fantastic for them at the moment, never meant for public consumption. But then that relationship goes south, and somebody, that person, uh, uses and abuses, and forever brings harm to you. So that's ultimately, like anything else. Think about what you're doing, and think about what the future repercussions are in that decision, and perhaps you want to rethink it. That's the unfortunate reality.
Look at this. Lily Rose. Recording your intimate moments is like a tattoo. You can never take it back. I'll never forget a comedian. I can't remember who the comedian is, but he said that getting a tattoo would have been like getting bell bottoms sewn onto your ankles in the 1970s. Says
Well, you can get tattoos removed.
you can. There's lasers now.
You can get tattoos removed.
Yes,
So,
this is true. Phil will ask you.
He's right about the first part. I'm amazed at these people that take pictures and film themselves and all that crap. And what are they thinking? Yeah, this will never get out anywhere. And then they break up with the guy that they did it with, and all of a sudden his stuff is out on the internet. I mean, idiots. That's all I can say. I mean, that's just foolish.
Man, Fil Waters being your dad.
I guess.
No, that makes sense. So two more quick ones. There's a guy named Nathaniel Fouch Pratt. An arrest report obtained by KSNV alleges that Las Vegas. This is interesting, Phil. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police are conducting a traffic stop the night of February 20th. They're stopped. They're given a ticket. Coming the other way is a car. Woman rolls down the window, sticks her head out, and she mouths to police, "I need help." Police catch that in real time, flip around, leave the person they're giving a ticket to, pursue this guy, and they arrest him. The guy, Nathaniel Fouch Pratt, screams at them, "She has to die tonight." He had attempted to strangle the woman before he was taken into custody. Now, this is why I love. They were on a road trip from Illinois to California, and this happens in Vegas. Kudos to law enforcement. They're giving a ticket to someone. A car comes by the other way. This woman mouths to them because I guess she didn't want to yell and get the repercussions. They see her saying, "Turn around, chase them, catch them." Is that just good old-fashioned police work, Phil?
I think it's just good old response by some good cops that caught a clue and pursued it. Yeah. And that's what, and let me tell you something. That's what good cops and good detectives do every single day. And so I get a little agitated. I do get my panties in a wad. when people get very, very critical about police and this generic all cops are bad cops, and the defunding the police movement and all this crap. And they're all suffering the consequences for that stuff, by the way. So, the police are here to serve, to be protectors. And if I might, in the book of Romans, it talks about that in the Bible. So we're the peacemakers, and that's why, at least in Texas, I don't know if this is around the country, but in Texas, we are licensed peace officers. We're not licensed cops. We're not licensed police officers. We are licensed peace officers. I could show you my license right now, and it says licensed peace officer. So, so great job. Great job by a bunch of good cops out there doing the job that they're supposed to be doing.
Fil, in 2 sentences or less, I'm going to ask Scott the same question. What makes a great police officer? 2 sentences or less, Fil. You've never done that in your life.
Well,
there's one.
We are held to a higher standard, and we have to meet that standard every day. And so, I missed whatever that little exchange was. I missed that completely.
I said 2 sentences. You're on your 8th one already.
Oh, okay. Well, and that's my fault. That's you're the one passing out the coin, so that's on you, Joel.
Scott Duffy, what makes a great police officer?
Right.
Pointing down to Fil.
Well, look.
So, trust.
The best cops that I've seen are the cops that didn't become cops because it was a paycheck. I know for me, it was a calling. I had a real job before I became a cop. And so the folks that get into police work, that are passionate about it, that truly want to serve the public and protect the public and do what they can and are very sacrificial about that. I mean, look, cops give their life. In fact, in the last week, there have been 2 police officers killed in the line of duty doing their jobs. And so I'm just telling you that, and these folks that are getting into police work now are much different than when I was in it. When I first got into it, God bless them. I don't think I would be a cop in today's world just because of the circumstances. We've demonized the police, not everybody, but enough of these people that want to demonize the police for their own evil purposes, and we've gotten away from honoring police officers and respecting what they do every day, because they're doing a job that may cause them to sacrifice their lives for a cause greater than their own. And the same thing goes with our military, our Marines, our Army, our soldiers, our Air Force airmen, and our sailors. So these people that want to be so critical about the police as though we're the problem, I would challenge them to look in the mirror and let that reflection look back at them and make maybe make a different judgment about that. But we're held to a higher standard. We should maintain a higher standard, and most of the 750,000 police officers at the local, state, and federal level that are pinning on a badge every day and going to work every day for the citizenry of this country, 98% of those folks are doing the job. And I'll tell you what, we've got a better credibility rate and a higher integrity rate than the clergy does. So, people need to understand what the job is. Everybody thinks they can be a cop, but I guarantee you that's not true. That's not true. Not everybody can do the job. And Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that. But Scott, go ahead.
Duffy, was that 2 sentences, Scott?
That may have been 10 or 20 cents, but nonetheless, double it, Scott.
You know what?
Double it.
Let's
It was a run-on sentence.
There's no comma in there. Let's end with Elvis here. Another horrible story, actually, but it's Elvis. Matthew Chantelois. He's an Elvis impersonator, Scott Duffy. And not only is he an Elvis impersonator, he's an Elvis impersonator in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Erie County. You familiar with Erie County?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
There.
He was impersonating Elvis. I don't know if he was just doing it in his living room or if he had like a job, but he gets caught with a 16-year-old girl from New York State. He's been indicted on federal child sex exploitation charges. The young girl left her phone at home, so the New York State police had to use this Elvis's cell phone, who's 45. She's 16. He's 45. And they traced him to an Erie County motel. Just another demented story here. 1 minute you think you're dealing with Elvis, the next minute you're dealing with a child predator. His bail was set at $100,000. But Scott Duffy, is that sort of an obvious thing to do or good police work that they were able to grab his phone and trace it somehow to his? How do you do that? How do you trace his phone? I'm confused. Were they doing that remotely, tracing his phone?
No, if I hear it right, because I've done a few of these travelers cases, right? So obviously the 16-year-old victim, is exploited and probably having some issues of her own at home. And this guy gets a hold of her, through however he made contact with her, and in quite a few different ways, gaming, just whatever. So he lures her from Pennsylvania over to New York, and probably tells her, leave your phone, you don't need it. And so I imagine some pretty quick and good police work were able to identify him, knowing that she doesn't have a phone. So thereby they were able, point A, point B, they figured out who he was. And because these people, they use credit cards, they use their own cell phones, and they may use a pseudonym, but somebody in the digital world, IP address and whatnot, have all the real information, and they're able to get that. And they probably were able to jump on his phone, knowing that that's where she was heading.
She left voluntarily, by the way. She left. I mean, she's 16.
She left voluntarily. She was duped.
Yeah.
Having probably some other issues, but exploited by somebody who was going to do nothing but harm.
Mm-hmm. Ida Shaw, JD, someone said just like the real Elvis, and she says, well, Elvis married Priscilla when she was 14. This girl was 16. So what a day. What a week.
True. That's not true. Who said that?
It's not true. I don't know. What do I know? So how old was she? She was young.
She was 21 when they got married, for crying out loud. He met her when she was 14 in Germany when he was in the army. Good grief, people.
Mary Griffin coming back. Phil.
Come on.
Phil, are you a big Elvis fan? Let's finally end with something that's not horror. You big Elvis fan?
I don't know that I was a big Elvis fan. I loved Elvis. I thought he was great. My mom, now she was a big Elvis fan. In fact, she actually saw him in concert a couple of times. But yeah, I mean, I liked Elvis. Thought Elvis was a good guy. The troubled young man, because of his circumstance. And Colonel Parker was the evil usurper in that deal. So
that was a great.
If you've seen the movie Elvis, the one that
I was just going to say, great movie,
great movie, and that I can't remember the actor's name, but
He was
you know,
phenomenal.
he actually sang those songs.
Yeah, that guy was phenomenal.
Yeah, that was an amazing, and it was, you know, I mean, historically, I mean, they did a little, you know, the poetic license stuff, but it was pretty accurate. I mean, historically, but
Hey, Phil, are
yeah.
you a big fan of the Oscars, Phil? Do you tune in every year, beginning to
What?
end? And are you a big fan of the Academy Awards, the Oscars? Do you watch
The
the
what?
entire
Yeah.
the Oscars?
The what?
Is he joking? Is he pulling my leg right now? Do you watch the what's that called? Do you watch the red carpet show on E?
Let me tell you something. I'm kind of with
watches the
George.
red carpet. He loves the
I'm kind of with George C. Scott when he refused the Oscar for Patton, and he said it's nothing but a meat parade. So I'm with George C. Scott.
I'm with what's his name?
No, I don't watch them.
Yeah, I'm with Ricky Gervais, who just ripped on every single person and told all of Hollywood how full of themselves they were.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know this, but you were good, Phil. He's pulling your leg, Joel. That's his answer. There you go. Jessica M says she's laughing out loud. I'm not gonna lie, the show depressed the hell out of me. I look forward to Fridays.
This was a pretty dark version.
This is dark.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna hang with my beautiful children who I love, but I'm really gonna hang with Ethel and Fred because they calm me down. Fred, once a puppy, is still a puppy. Scott Duffy, you know what's going on now? You'll be interested in this. We have a little playpen where Fred hangs out. And Ethel, comparing Ethel to Fred is like comparing a hippopotamus to a caterpillar size-wise. Ethel's a giant. So what Ethel does now is comes over to the playpen and drops that 14-inch tongue of hers and her head down and eats all of Fred's food because it's puppy food. And I think in their world, puppy food probably tastes so much better because it's like fat and nutrients. What do I do about this, Scott Duffy? How do I keep Ethel? And I yelled at her. I go, that's her thing. But she just looked at me like I was an idiot and ate all the puppy food. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, let Ethel eat what Ethel wants to eat. So my Pearl will watch. I've taken pictures. She'll sit, watch Pickles, who's my cat. I just put her food 4 steps above on the stairs. She'll go up there, she'll eat, and Pearl will sit down, watch, and then as soon as Pickles leaves, Pearl will go and help herself. And I tried stopping in the beginning. Now it's a show for me. It's my humor.
There's some funny comments in here. Obituary says she had a feral named Pickles. Put a cover on the playpen. I can't do that. He's too big for the playpen already. I had a follow-up question for myself, but now I forgot what it was. I imagine, Phil, that you're good at training dogs for some reason. You've got that. You're like Cesar Millan. You've got so does Scott. You too. Scott, are you good at training dogs?
No, but because I allow them to do what they want to do. As long as
they're good at training him. There you go.
Phil, are you good? But I've seen you with your dogs, Phil, and Nugget, and I know you're like a pushover. Are you good at training them?
I don't know that I've ever set out to train them. I've been raised with animals all my life, all manner of animals. My dad used to raise German Shepherds for the police officer of the Tulsa Police Department back in the 50s, and he was one of the people that got actually canine units onto the Tulsa PD. And we had a Shepherd for about 13 years, and she was well trained. She went to the schools and all that, and I've got pictures of my dad with Cindy and holding trophies and obedience schools and that kind of thing. And you know, as just a side note, my dad was an old cowboy, and that's the only time I ever saw my father cry, was when he had to put her down.
Mm.
And so yeah, we've always had a, I've handled horses. I've halter broke. We had a little filly that was popped out one year, and that was a challenge trying to halter break him up and down the freaking barn. But so I don't know that I've ever gotten into training. I just I know what I want them to do, and I try to treat them in a manner that wants them to want to do what I want them to do, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, you just you got to draw the line. It's like kids, you got you got to know when to say no, and then praise when praise is needed. But you need to show them. I can tell you what, there's never an animal that we ever had, a dog in particular. You can always sense how a dog's been treated if you reach out to them and they flinch, because that means that somebody has beat them around the head. And I can tell you that there's never been a dog that I've ever owned that will ever happen.
If I ever see a dog flinching its head, I'm going to smack the owner in the head.
Well, there's a reason why, I can tell you that.
By the way, everyone's telling me to separate them, but the real issue, as you all know by now, Fred's full name is Frederick Morris Roosevelt Brown Waldman. And the Morris Roosevelt is because I firmly believe that Mabel Rose, my puggle of almost 17 years, that her spirit lives within inside of Freddie Brown. And Mabel, may she rest in peace, loved food more than life itself. She would have left me for one kibble of food, and I was okay with it. I came to terms with it. But what happens is Ethel was never an eater, never cared about food. But now Fred comes over and tries to take Ethel's food while Ethel's eating. And I let Ethel lay the law down. But this little fat puppy is trying to get every scrap of food from Ethel. And Ethel is now eating her meals in like 13 seconds. She gets a big bowl of food twice a day. And so I'm actually worried for Ethel. So I am now divulging all my dog anxiety, but I want to end on a positive note. Jersey Girl here has a question for Scott Duffy. Why did my 1-year-old male lab lift his leg and pee on a man twice at the dog park? And by the way, Hey, it's Jay says, Phil Rory. Why did her dog pee on the guy twice at the dog park, Scott?
Right.
And then it's probably time to wrap.
They're marking their territory, so he or she. I've seen both do both. So marking the territory is, I think, the number one. So maybe that thinks that's where he wants to be.
Look at Chrissy Bacon. What a varied and interesting chat. It really it amazes me.
I was reading the Jersey Girl post. That was pretty funny.
I can't believe that anyone is I really cannot believe that anyone watches this. But
anybody left?
I love it. If anyone can answer this final question, and I do need help, and maybe Scott, you can answer this. For the very first time in my life, I said, I'm going to get a male dog. I have a real son, J-Mac. And I said, I've always had female dogs. Let me get a male dog because I'm a man. And lo and behold, I picked Frederick Morris Roosevelt Brown up to take him outside. By the way, I can never take Freddie Morris out without Ethel bouncing up to come join us. Like, she knows. But here's my point, Scott. It gets a little graphic. I hope you can handle it. Fred Brown sniffs around, and then he squats. He does not lift a leg, but he's a man. Do you happen to know when the transition takes place to lifting a leg? It better happen. How do they know when they're going to lift the leg? I always wanted a dog that would lift his leg, but he's peeing like a female dog. Do you know the answer?
Are you?
I'm asking you. Do you know at what age they lift their leg?
I don't.
Oh, Lord.
Does anyone know out there at what age a dog learns to lift his leg? Please let me know. That's it.
Is there anything for him to lift his leg to, though? Are you taking him out in the open field?
Oh no, he's on a big grass area. Yeah, there's plenty. I mean, he's sniffing around.
Bush, a pole, or something.
He's
a blade of grass will suffice.
Oh, look at this. Catherine just destroyed me. Look at this. First of all, Jessica says Joel's life concerns are too good, followed by some male dogs never lift their leg. I'm going to literally lift it for him.
I've never seen one of those. Maybe they're conflicted, but I've never seen one of those.
Wait, Bill, is Nugget's a girl, right?
Nugget is a girl dog.
Okay.
Poppy is a girl dog.
Poppy's a girl.
But Poppy has a boyfriend named Manny who lives down the street. He's a little chihuahua, and he's pretty funny. And I guarantee what he does is he comes down to the house to visit Poppy. And what he will do if she's not there, he walks around the house and he lifts his leg on all manner of things. And then he leaves a little pile of poop right by our shoes on the back porch.
That's
pretty funny.
Do you know what's his name?
His name is Manny. And she outweighs him by about 50 pounds. But it's really funny when they get together because they love each other. I mean, this is a boyfriend girlfriend thing going on, and I mean, she gets down on the pavement so she can see him, and she's not standing over him, and he's just standing there, and his little tail is just doing this. I mean, it's hilarious. It's hilarious to watch.
Do you know
they're boyfriend girlfriend? It's really funny.
Does he lift his leg when he pees? Do you know the boy dog?
Oh, he does. He goes all over the place. All up and down the street. Yeah.
Look at this. Jersey girl giving me some more 411, as the kids say. Moses started lifting his, love the name, by the way. Moses started lifting his leg at 9 months old. My dog does not lift his leg, and he's almost 2. Hope he never does. My male dog does both. He squats and lifts his leg. Well, my dog better just lift his damn leg, and he better do it soon. I don't know what else to say. It's been a long week. That's all I can say.
We've covered a lot of different topics on this show.
We sure have. I just want to say again to the parents of Mercedes Vega, we're with you. We're thinking of you. Thank you for hopping into the chat today. We will connect. Justice for Mercedes Vega. Phil, your final thoughts, and then Scott, your final thoughts, and then let's end this bad boy.
Oh gosh, I don't know that I have any final thoughts. It's been kind of a, I think it's been a great show. I mean, we've done a lot of different things on this show, and I always love to read the comments and the responses, and especially when I am given the opportunity to be bold about my faith. I really enjoy that stuff. And to all the haters out there that just can't stand it, I pray for you every day. Prayed for you this morning, and I love every one of you. So I'm just, So I want to reflect the love of Christ to you guys and everybody out there. And I appreciate the opportunity to do that, as much angst as it brings to some of the viewers. But I would just pray for a great weekend for everybody, and go out there and do something that you have a passion for doing, and that will bring great joy to your life.
Beautifully said. Scott, you're going to get the last word today. Sharon, by the way, says you have to show him how. Scott, does Sharon mean that I have to go in the yard and lift my leg, or I have to lift his leg?
Yeah, no, I think your dog will watch you and then understand.
So I need to lift my leg.
And that needs to be on a video.
And we'll have to figure out how to shoot that one. Melissa Simok, my pug puppy started around 6 months, and I have a pug. So, 6 months. Look at this. This is a curveball. our girl dog lifts her leg.
Yeah, mine does. Yep.
Really? Your girl dog, really?
Every poll.
Well, that's
Your
one of
girl
those
dog.
That's one of those Louisiana dogs. So that
Yeah.
kind of explains that.
Yeah. Yep.
That's fat. Do we know why, Scott? Have you ever asked a vet? I'm very curious about this.
I've asked her, and she hasn't told me yet.
You asked the dog. That's um
Mhm.
what a what a what a what a
What a
let me
show.
I'll leave you guys with a very quick story that my dad used to tell me, and he would chuckle. So when we were growing up, there was a woman from Yugoslavia, may she rest in peace, Jorgovanka Milkovic. She had literally a second grade education from Serbia, but her and my mother became best of friends. My mom helped her come to this country. She came here with nothing. It was American dream. She started a cleaning service. Lo and behold, after a few years, it got so big she needed a van. Eventually, she needed 2 vans, and she was cleaning homes and earning money and working at a factory at night, doing well for herself. But we were such good friends with Jorgovanka Milkovic, Jerry, that when we would go away sometimes, we would leave our beloved dog with Jerry. And my dad, who had a very dry sense of humor, said, Joel, the dog's name was Doobie, not named after the Doobie brothers. In Hebrew, Doobie means like a little teddy bear, not named after the joint either. He'd say, Joel, Doobie absolutely hates going over to Jerry's. And I go, why, Dad? He goes, because she treats her like a dog. She would keep him in the garage, treat him like a dog. The hell's the matter with people that treat dogs like dogs? You got to treat dogs like people. That's my final message. Scott, your final thoughts?
You better take it while you got it, Scott.
How's anyone watching this still?
Right. Is this? Have you stopped recording?
I haven't yet. I haven't yet.
Yeah, I just want to say that I enjoyed. I just feel like today, always, but especially engaging. I think having Erika and Tom come in early also kind of gave a sense of bringing us back to our roots of what we do, what we talk about, and the fact that we're sharing our opinions and our experiences for the love of what we did. Right? It's ultimately it's a very violent, crazy world, but the law enforcement and those that try to help others try to bring a little bit of levity and love and good to people's lives. And I think this, especially as a Christian person myself, I and this Lenten season, and we all, whether you're of faith or not, you step back, you have introspection, and just try to do good to others, right, and for others, and you'll be a happier, better person. So, what a great team, and appreciate the invite each week. And
Scott, I have one more question, and then we'll
uh-oh,
wrap. I promise.
uh-oh.
So, you said Eric and Tom so confidently. It made me wonder, as a police officer, former police officer,
Mhm.
when people introduce themselves, do you always like? Are you very good at the details? Like, if you meet, because I never remember names, but since you
Yeah.
were trained as a law, like if someone says, "Hi, I'm Craig Smith," I used to work with Craig Smith. He had the
Mhm.
messiest desk in the world. But if someone's like, "Hi, I'm Craig Smith," like, are you remembering that? Is that going like in your bank? Like, are you very attuned to that? Is my question.
It all depends, and especially if it was somebody in my line of work, victim, witness, or a family member, somebody I would keep the name. I would write down the name, look at the name, and keep putting it in my head because I felt like that's very, very important to know their name, and then that helped me in my interviews of suspects to key up on certain things. But the name is that consensual introduction that, and as Phil talked of faith, religion, it is a relationship. So the same way I carry that through what I did, and so the names are important. And if I there's nothing like messing up a name. Nothing.
And one more question. This is just my own curiosity. You're sitting on your front porch, which you can't do because it's too cold, or you're out. You see a car that does not look familiar in your neighborhood. Are you immediately remembering the make, model, and part of the license plate? Is that something that you do? Phil is waving his head yes. Fil Waters, if you see a car that is unfamiliar in your neighborhood, are you immediately remembering the make and model? And are you taking a look at the plate?
If I can get to the plate, sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'll always, register it back here and hope that I
I
never have to pull it back up again.
Yeah,
I
Scott.
text myself. I'll text myself a plate if I feel like something is up.
You know what? On that note, I'm going to have to just end the show. Absolutely fascinating. Situational awareness. These guys do it all. First responders. This comment, by the way, the most important one here, Sherry Douglas. Prayer for Mercedes Vega's family. Hugs to you. The monsters will be caught. Justice for Mercedes Vega. Love you, America. Love you, Houston, Texas. Love you, the Commonwealth of PA, Hawaii, the Big Island, the Republic of Ireland, Australia, UK, Canada, Latin America, Central America, Australia, the whole world. See you Monday.